Thank you, everyone, for being tonight's meeting. Before we begin, Councilmember Branch has an item that he needs to bring up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So as Raleigh's representative on the Campo Executive Board, I've been informed of the need to provide Campo with representation on the upcoming 2035 Wake Transit Plan update on Stakeholder Advisory Committee. As a participant of the earlier Wake County Transit Plan Stakeholder Committee, and also as chairs of the Transit and Transportation Committee, I would request that the council would endorse me to serve as one of two council members on the stakeholder group, and I asked that another council member to also serve as the group. The process will last approximately, it says 18 months, but will kick off soon. Raleigh will have a total of 5 representatives on the stakeholder group, and staff is working to identify a member from the Raleigh Transit Authority, a planning representative from the Raleigh Planning Commission, and a regular user of the Go Raleigh system to serve on the committee. Yes. And I know the mayor serves on the Go Triangle Board
Yeah.
as well, and still in
As
transit.
vice chair.
As vice chair.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all.
All right, we're going to start with the Municipal Service District, Blue Ridge Road corridor. We have 17 people now who have signed up to speak. Each speaker will have 2 minutes, and we'll start with a staff presentation.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Sadia Sattar from Budget and Management Services. Staff has a short presentation before the Mayor opens the hearing. So to kick off, this is the map, and you should all be really familiar with the proposed MSC boundary map. After the public hearing today, just like we've done with the downtown MSD, should council decide to proceed, folks in the proposed boundary will have an opportunity till May 14th to submit petitions for exclusion, which have to be addressed to the city clerk. We will bring back those letters on May 21st, and then should the council again decide to move forward, the first reading of the ordinance will be on June 4th, with the second reading of the ordinance on June 18th. So again, the items for consideration today are to host the public hearing, but then also get direction from council on whether you would like to proceed with next steps, especially as they pertain to the creation of the Blue Ridge MSD. And again, if you decide to move forward today, the next step would be to consider petitions for exclusion on May 21st. So just similar to what we did with the downtown MSD process, folks are requested to submit petitions for exclusion by May 14th. And again, we'll review them with the same standards that we've done, which is to ensure that standards are received in writing by May 14th, that they're from an owner of a parcel within that MSD boundary, and then the owner then specifies that they do not need those services or functions in the proposed boundary to a greater extent than the rest of the city. So we shared this with you all last time when we met on April 16th to discuss the downtown MSD expansion, which is that staff could, option A, staff could review the petitions for exclusion, again, given those similar, criteria that I described just a little bit ago, that they have to be from property owners who own a parcel within the boundary, and then they have to, again, submit in writing why they would not benefit from those services. And then we would bring back those requests for consideration for May 21st, or City Council could review those requests without prior staff review. So that's it. So we just need direction on how you'd like to move forward, and or if you'd like to move forward the expansion.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Fort?
I would imagine that we want to stay consistent.
Sure.
In terms of how we did it with the other MSD, so allow staff to do the reviews of the request to be excluded.
And we'll bring those back on May 21st then. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to open the public hearing. If we could get the list of speakers up. Okay, the list of speakers will be put up, but I will start calling the first speaker, Jeff Murison.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jeff Murison. I'm the Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance, and my address is 4734 Alpha Street, which is in a townhouse community just adjacent to the proposed boundary. For a decade, the Alliance has been working to meet with, listen to, and assist stakeholders in the area, including residents, property owners, merchants, venues, attractions, as well as our partners at the city, the county, and the state to coordinate and build a successful, sustainable future for the very complex part of the city. The Alliance envisions a community where additional investment adds value to the existing stakeholders, residents, and neighborhoods. It supports options for everyone to live in the community through a range of residential options, including options that are affordable, a full range of transportation options so that you're not limited to just your car to live, work, and play there, and to facilitate an inclusive community vision for everyone. At the same time, the Alliance believes that there is a need for a community-based organization that can help strengthen the community and build consensus for the future, so that residents living in and around it, renters and homeowners, property owners and merchants all have easy access to an advocate to help get solutions to their concerns, such as graffiti removed, litter picked up, having things like sidewalks, bus shelters, bike share stations installed, to cheerlead for new transit solutions, or simply share information about street closures, construction projects, and major events. The Alliance believes that the creation of an MSD for this part of the city will be uniquely helpful in maintaining the existing quality of life, while at the same time helping build West Raleigh as a distinct community. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Gottlieb? If we could have Hua Huang, Jim Palmier, and Stuart Levin lined up.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Daniel Gottlieb. My address, pardon me, is 2019 Wilson Street in Durham. However, I am a co-founder of the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance, and I'm the former Director of Planning and Design for the North Carolina Museum of Art. From 1990 to 2020, I oversaw the development of the campus, including its museum park, which when I arrived was fronted on Blue Ridge Road by the Polk Youth Detention Center, which was less than welcoming way to the boulevard. A priority during my time, those 30 years, was to help catalyze the redevelopment of the corridor and equitable repurposing of the underutilized land. By 2020, however, the museum's park's visitation exploded to over 1 million annually, clearly demonstrating the power of place and the potential of the corridor's attraction. Now, as the new HHS headquarters nears completion, development is accelerating and amplifying the need for safety, services, and amenities. As the principal advocate for the district's identity and cohesion, the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance needs your support to sustain and grow service to the rapidly changing and diversifying community. So tonight we are here to ask for your partnership in this commitment and the approval of this MSD. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was wondering why I knew your name, and I was like, oh, yeah. So, goes back. Thank you. Hua Huang?
Good afternoon. I am here to talk about the Blue Ridge MSD. These are the talking points from a fellow comrade of mine who has been attending the meeting extensively over the past few months, Cole McMullen, you may know him. And these are the points that he's gathered and we've discussed over this, and just want to bring this to your attention as far as the Blue Ridge MSD is concerned. One, about 22 apartment complexes are included in the district. The additional property tax will likely be passed through to tenants, increasing their cost of living burdens. Two, the amenity effect will likely take hold, increasing the desirability of the area and competition to live within it. This will ultimately further increase market rent value and will disproportionately impact low-income tenants. Community engagement results indicate strong level of support for capital improvement like increased sidewalk connectivity and enhanced public transit. However, it seems like the MSD is not designed to fund any other capital improvement, so might need to look into that. Also, none of the amenities proposed are cost-saving measures for the residents that live within the district. Proposed amenities primarily benefit tourists and visitors that live outside the district and won't be paying for it. And the remaining benefits are things that cities should already be doing, like trash pickup and coordination and development. Also, the community engagement survey results indicate a large amount of feedback requesting apartment complexes be removed from the district to avoid cost of living increase. But tenants cannot individually appeal removal from the district. Their landlord has to be the one doing that. So tenant either had to convince the landlord to appeal or convince city council to either deny the MSD request or rework it in the committee so that the district boundaries are redrawn. Also, MSD added another level of bureaucracy that demands more time for average working residents who are hard-pressed to stay engaged with the city, county, state, and federal events. So these are the current concerns that we have with the MSD. I'd like for you to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Jim Palmier.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Jim Palmier. I live at 367 Meredith Street in Raleigh. I support the formation of the West Raleigh Municipal Services District. A little bit of background. My wife and I have lived in West Raleigh since 1985. We have seen how it has grown primarily from a place to drive through to get home to emerging as a destination to visit. I participated in the Blue Ridge Road District Study more than a decade ago about what an exciting area the Blue Ridge Corridor can become while welcoming thoughtful, appropriate, and intelligent growth to create a sustainable community. Several years back, I was invited to join the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance as an ex officio member, and I continue in that role today. Recently, I became chair of the Residents and Neighborhoods Committee. In that position, I have seen the importance of communicating with residents, neighborhoods, businesses, and local organizations in and near the proposed MSD, keeping them informed of activities, responding to their needs and concerns, and acting as a conduit between all the stakeholders. The MSD will help share information and keep everyone, residents, businesses, employees, and visitors, engaged and up to date. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Stuart Levin. I'm the chair of the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance, address 3237 Blue Ridge Road. The City of Raleigh's mission is to, quote, build a stable platform of evolving services for our community through which we champion positive and sustainable growth and realize visionary ideas for all. The city's vision is to, quote, pursue world-class quality of life by actively collaborating with our community towards a fulfilling and inspired future for all. With these core values as our template, the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance has spent the past 16 years working together with the city and its many other stakeholders to create a future for West Raleigh with a whole greater than the sum of its parts. You have heard from a few of these stakeholders this evening, and we'll hear from a few more. While it has been my personal privilege to serve as founding chair and president, the BRCA's governance is directed by the board and its work supported through our contract for administrative staffing with the Hillsborough Street Community Services Corporation. However, with current and future district development, we have seen an annual need for increased staff services to support the BRCA's mission. Over half of our annual budget of approximately $140,000, which itself has doubled over the past 5 years, provides administrative staff support with limited funding for additional services. We are heavily dependent on volunteers for our work, which is no longer sustainable. The current method of voluntary funding from stakeholders, in addition to our $40,000 city grant, is greatly appreciated, but has long ceased to meet the growing needs of the Blue Ridge District. We hope you will support creation of the West Raleigh Municipal Services District, a necessary next step to achieve its full potential for sustainable, equitable, and healthy growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Perkins has withdrawn. So next we have Todd Hancock, Denzel Burnside, Jane Doggett, Rebecca McGrail. If you could come up.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Hancock. I live at 3425 Caldwell Drive, which is in Meredith Woods, and it is in the Blue Ridge Corridor District. I am here tonight to speak in favor of the MSD, of course. I've been somebody who grew up in Raleigh. I've lived in West Raleigh back in Meredith Woods since 2011. 2 kids now, so a lot has changed. I've been on the Blue Ridge Corridor Board for a better part of 8 years now, and I've been the treasurer for almost all of that time. So I definitely know firsthand of like kind of where things have been and where things could go. And really thinking about what I wanted to say in a very short amount of time tonight was not so much about, hey, this is me as the treasurer of the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance or me as somebody who lives in West Raleigh, because ultimately it's not as much about me or us, it's about everybody who kind of set the stage for us long before us and created what is a very unique place in Raleigh. Having lived in some other areas, Raleigh does not have a riverfront, does not have a waterfront, does not have a mountain, does not have any geographical defining feature. It was put on the map. I cannot think of a more unique place in town that borders an over 5,000 acre park, Umstead that we all know, or any of these other, things like the Greenway that cuts right through it, or Prairie Ridge Eco Station, or, it's always been, for me and anybody I've talked to, a source of inspiration, whether or not it's games at Carter Finley, events at PNC, going to the Museum of Art, especially with the park now, thank you, Dan. And I think we've really got to think long term as to how that can be managed. And that's why a lot of these guys started this before my time on the board. But it's really, it takes some vision. And I really encourage everybody to think long term, how can we manage this? If we look kind of narrow and don't widen the lens and look at the big picture, it's easy to think about the binary aspect of just the money and the MSD. But that's really just a tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Denzel, is Denzel here? Okay. Jane.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Jane Doggett, 3325 Hampton Road, which is just on the edge of the corridor. And I am here as a mother, a mom that has a daughter that attends school in the corridor, and also myself as a child that grew up in Raleigh and really spent a lot of the memorable moments that I think back on in childhood, from going to the fair, to the fireworks, to the ice caps, and then as a getting older, going to the Museum of Art and volunteering and being very engaged there. So it's just very personal, this area, and what I see is the gateway into Raleigh for most folks coming in from the airport and outward. So I'm here to support the MSD, as I believe it's needed to ensure the goals and the vision of the Blue Ridge Corridor District are accomplished. And with respect really to walkability, affordability, collaboration, and connectivity to enhance the experience of the residents, the workers in the area, and the students in the Blue Ridge Corridor. I'm really excited to see the opportunities to include public spaces, which we've already seen with the greenways and such, but to make sure that that's continued in a sustainable way. And really for the future generations. Again, looking back as a child and then seeing my children that are going to school in this corridor and thinking about the future generations here. I believe an MSD will create a more engaged stakeholders. It's great what the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance has done and the hard work that they've put in with a membership organization, but really to get the next step, it needs to be a more sustainable path of funding, and the MSD will accomplish that. So I am in full support, and really what Todd said was spot on. So it's the logical next step here to benefit everyone who lives here, who works here, who really comes and visits here as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca McGrail, Shane Collins, Sig Hutchinson, Adam Meyer, and Roberto Hoyt.
Good evening, Mayor Baldwin and members of the Raleigh City Council. My name is Rebecca McGrail, and I'm head of school at Follow the Child Montessori at 3601 Hardin Road. I live in Durham. Thank you for your opportunity to share my perspective. Our school supports the establishment of a municipal service district in the Blue Ridge Corridor. Even over my relatively brief 5-year tenure as head of school, development in the area has grown tremendously, although more organically without a unifying framework, it seems. We believe that becoming an MSD will ensure that future growth in our community will have greater chance of being well planned and encourage stakeholder engagement that that signage and wayfinding will be optimized, especially for those new to the area, and that both cleanliness and safety will be prioritized. Each of these factors are especially important to us as a school community, but also to the residential community, the Meredith Woods neighborhood, which is adjacent to our property, whose quality of life we also value. We're hopeful that being part of an MSD will allow us a channel for sharing concerns, such as the need for traffic calming measures, since continued business and population growth has a direct impact on our neighborhood. Thank you for considering us.
Thank you. Shane Collins? Not here. Okay, Sig Hutchinson?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilors, I'm Sig Hutchinson, 2704 Snowy Meadow Court, Raleigh, North Carolina. And how about those Carolina Hurricanes? 6th year in a row we're in the playoffs, and for the untrained eye, you could say it's so easy. All you have to do is take that little puck and put it into a somewhat small net, and you win. But we all know that that's not the case. We all know to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, you have to have everything right, including making thousands of right decisions every day to be successful. Another example, Hillsborough Street. It's beautiful, pedestrian-focused, vibrant businesses, functioning infrastructure, beautiful roundabouts and crosswalks, clean, safe, fun, and yet many of us remember the days of Hillsborough before these investments. It was a dump. It was seedy. It was anything but a destination. Only with the investment of the infrastructure and the funding of an MSD that could focus on the thousands of small decisions that needed to be made every day did it become successful. And finally, the Blue Ridge Corridor. The investments in the PNC Arena will soon create an entertainment capital of North Carolina, right there. DHHS will soon put 5,000 new employees on the corridor. UNC Rex Hospital will be expanding and creating one of the best healthcare destinations in the state, if not the country. The Art Museum, Bandwidth, the Fairgrounds, NC State, Bus Rapid Transit, Triangle Bikeway, passenger rail, walkable communities, workforce housing, and the list goes on. And yet, counselors, success is anything but guaranteed. It's not until one organization can focus the small decisions that need to be made every day that ultimately we can become successful, which is why the MSD ultimately needs to be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. And go Canes. Adam Meyer?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is, Adam Migliore Meyer, and I live at 517 Highsmith Court in Knightdale. There are many reasons that I support the MSD and the Blue Ridge Road corridor, but I thought it might be more helpful to share my story as a former resident for over 10 years and a current professional working in the corridor. In fact, these experiences that I had living and working in the corridor precisely were the reasons that led me to choose transit planning as a profession, as well as bicycle and pedestrian planning. I consider myself very fortunate to have grown up in this corridor, enjoying areas like Shank Forest, Umstead Park, many of the other places that others have already mentioned today. But I also recognize that there are many challenges that this corridor has had since 1998, when I began living there, to today. For example, in high school, I didn't have a car, so I would walk over a mile to reach Go Raleigh's Route number 4 to reach Raleigh Charter High School. And along the way would encounter many sidewalk gaps and unsafe conditions. And to this day, I wish that our corridor was more mixed use so we didn't have to jump in a car to do an errand or go out to dinner. So for all those reasons, I support the MSD. We've been working for many years on a vision that reflects input from the community and many stakeholders. There's been numerous plans and events. And so now there's a critical time that we need this dependable and sustainable funding source. Thank you.
Thank you. Roberto Hoyt?
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Roberto Hoyt, and my address is 2114 Coley Forest Place, which is adjacent to the proposed MSD. And I support the proposed West Raleigh MSD. I've been a resident of West Raleigh for 36 years and love where I live. I'm a commercial real estate broker at York Properties. York Properties owns the Lake Boone Trail Shopping Center, which sits in the proposed MSD boundaries and also supports the proposed MSD. I'm a volunteer board member of the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance, and the Alliance has been instrumental in thoughtfully developing the MSD proposal and its boundaries over several years. The boundaries were carefully developed to exclude as many residential areas as possible, and the MSD would give a voice to all stakeholders, particularly renters and residents who don't currently have a voice. The future of the West Raleigh area is bright, and I'm excited about all the recent and planned investments in the proposed MSD area. I want to be sure these investments are managed properly, and these investments will create increased density and traffic, as we all know, and the MSD would advocate for increased traffic solutions and make sure that walking and biking in the area would be safer. The MSD would also be an advocate for more affordable housing in the area. The MSD would also assist in providing additional services in the area, and more specifically, I've heard residents complain about graffiti in some of the underpasses, litter in high foot traffic areas, and a lack of general maintenance of landscape areas. The proposed MSD would address these complaints and many others on behalf of all stakeholders by developing solutions for these issues and again giving all stakeholders a voice while advocating for a more sustainable future for the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Denzel has come in. You'd like to come up, please?
Apologies for my tardiness. Good evening, everybody. Mayor, council, good to see you all again. I am Denzel Burnside from Wake County. We sent a letter. Hopefully everyone got it. I just wanted to articulate a couple finer points as to why, one, I personally live in off Hillsborough in an MSD, and our organization has decided that we would want to back the rise of the Blue Ridge Corridor. As is no secret to anybody else here, we are very much involved in density, transportation, affordable housing. So all things that I think I've heard everyone else speak in this room fit within the plan for why this is something that we have supported and signed on as a letter to send to you all. Second to that, what I've learned in my time period of being a researcher of Wake County as a whole is that there seems to be a lot of blighted areas of concern. And I think in the conversation I had with one of the council members here is that we have to come to the reality that we're no longer a sleepy town any longer. And unfortunately, as the city is growing, there are services that we no longer can directly handle. I had opportunity to take a walk with Jeff Morrison and get some understanding around the history of Hillsborough and realizing that that was North Carolina State's back front door. And that was a bloody alley at one point in time. I didn't know the history of that, even though I had been staying there for 2 years. So to those who are in this room who may have their concerns and issues and feel as if we're doing displacement, the reality of it is that there is a transient generation that's coming here, and they're not going to stop coming. And as somebody who spent all day at Campo terrified about a transit plan that we have not developed, and people who are going to be coming here that don't have resources, don't have a place to stay, don't have density, don't have housing, and a council that may change in a moment, I think we need to get serious about our business. So that's my word. I'm here as a resource. I appreciate you all. I'm off to another meeting. Have a good one.
Thank you. Okay, Brian Masochi, Jeff Hastings, Devin Howard, and Matt Shelton.
Good evening. My name is Brian Mazaki. I represent the ownership for 3 apartment communities that are in the proposed district, the Dakota, Arlo at Blue Ridge, and Lee House. We purchased our first property in Wake County back in 2018. The majority of our investments have been successful thus far, and we've enjoyed being a part of the community. We are a landlord that takes great pride in maintaining our properties well and providing quality housing for our residents. At the 3 properties in this district that we own, we have 19 employees that work on site. We hire local vendors for all the other services. With the continued growth in population and appreciation in real estate values, we haven't been that surprised to see our taxes and assessed values increase since we entered this market. As an example, One of our properties, the taxes went from $450,000 in 2018 to $710,000 last year, a 62% increase. In addition to that, those tax increases we've already seen, we've also received 2024 assessed values, which are up 51%. This is all before the new tax district that is being proposed. We feel that the increases in the taxes that we've already seen and that we will continue to see should cover some of the services that are mentioned in the feasibility study. There's also a large portion of this district that's comprised of exempt properties that make up 36% of the assessed value of the entire district. We don't feel that it's fair that the other 64% would have to pay for those enhanced services. Lastly, our 3 properties make up 59% of the total apartment units in this proposed district, so we would bear a large burden of the new tax. We're happy to continue to pay our fair share to the community and understand the taxes need to be raised to cover the rising costs of services provided, but we don't feel that adding this new district is an equitable way to allocate.
Can I ask you something? What property did you say went from was it 400,000?
The Dakota.
From 400,000 to 750?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Jeff Hastings?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Normally I'm at Town of Apex where I live, but my business is at 5227 Hillsborough Street, Burke Brothers Hardware. Been there since 1936. I also am the president of the NC State University Club at 4200 Hillsborough Street, so we sort of bookend that area. I am all in favor of the municipal service district as somebody that is going to pay out of our checkbook directly to help this. Part of this is because in the past, we have tried to communicate with Planning Board for the City of Apex for an apartment complex that's going across the street from us. The bus route that runs from Crabtree Valley, then down Western Boulevard, it stops on our side of the road. There's not going to be a crosswalk between the north side and the south side of Hillsborough Street. So what we're looking at is a unified voice that can then go to the City of Raleigh, the Wake County, and also NCDOT to help administer and advocate for us as a small business. Another thing is the beautification. The beautification, if you look at on Blue Ridge Road, it's owned by DOT. The medians are not taken care of. The sidewalks are not taken care of. If you look at the Museum of Art side versus the DHHS side, it's apples and oranges. And so if we can get this MSD in place, you will have a great work, live, play environment. You'll have people that can go from Meredith Woods to the PNC Arena, walk over to the fairgrounds, walk over to us on Hillsborough Street, and go back and forth comfortably and safely. And so with that, I would ask for your support, and if I can help with any way, please reach out, and I will do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Devin Howard?
Good evening, Council. My name is Devin Howard. I live at 1926 Lost Lane, but I am also the Communications Director for the Blue Ridge Corridor Alliance. The reason I believe so deeply in an MSD for West Raleigh is because I believe in creative possibility. We all know growth will continue in this area. We know of more apartments coming, more entertainment options, more people. But what we have now is the opportunity to creatively shape that growth. Imagine a place where you can walk to the grocery store or walk to a locally owned restaurant where your friends work. Imagine green spaces that have new art curated specifically for that neighborhood and are built with economic sustainability in mind. Imagine the ability to walk or ride a bike or ride a bus anywhere you want to go and never have to move your car. Imagine a community where you have community gardens or community tool libraries that are open for everyone because everyone is taking care of one another. And just maybe these community spaces are staffed through partnerships with community groups that support those in our community that need on-the-job training to continue moving up economically. An organization that a resident could come to when a street lamp is out and they don't know who to talk to for a new crosswalk. That is the beauty of what an MSD could be. It's about a dedicated group taking care of its community, right there, in a small area where they are able to focus on what matters to their immediate community. This only happens when there is a group of people focused and committed to making that vision a reality, with the resources to back it up. I believe in taking care of people in the ways that community needs and wants. And an MSD is an excellent tool to take care of the people, because that team focuses on relationship building, daily conversations, and consistent action for the community every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt Shelton?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Matt Shelton. I'm the Senior Director of Real Estate and Facilities for Bandwidth, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of our company. Bandwidth is a Raleigh-based company that built its global headquarters on what is now one of the highest valued non-exempt properties in the proposed district boundary. Now, non-exempt is an important distinction to make because it brings me to the first of several reasons that Bandwidth does not support the creation of this MSD and is asking the council to reject the request to create it as it's currently proposed. To Mr. Mazzocchi's point earlier, and I want to hopefully correct a statistic here, it's actually 63% of the property inside the proposed district is tax exempt. This means 37% of the property owners, 37, are paying for 100% of the tax. This is not equitable. The 37% who will bear that burden of this tax are primarily made up of businesses like ours and apartment complexes, as you've heard tonight. And the cost of this tax will undoubtedly get passed on to consumers and to renters. Second, multiple versions of the proposal have shown that the majority of funds will go to overhead administrative costs instead of the community services. This ratio is just simply not in the best interest of those having to pay into the tax. Additionally, if a majority of the revenue is going to overhead and administrative services, that leaves a minority of the revenue for community services across a district that is frankly quite large. By one estimate, about 2,500 to 3,000 acres in size. And we just question how the amount of money proposed in the tax can effectively impact such a large district, which leads us to believe that the tax will be increased over time, which is a possibility year over year. Bandwidth supports the responsible development of the West Raleigh area. We chose this area for our corporate home and we're invested in the success. We just don't think the MSD is the best way to do it in this capacity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, that is it for our speakers on that. Let's see, should close the public hearing. Okay, I will close the public hearing then. And
Yes. And then staff will bring back, as I mentioned earlier, folks requesting exclusion have up until May 14th to provide the city clerk with letters, and then we'll bring those back for city council on May 21st.
Okay, please provide list so we can mark things up like.
It was provided in the agenda item that you had today as well, so but we'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, on paper, so we can mark it up and hand it back to you all.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next item is petition annexation AX 3823.
Good evening, everyone. Christopher Golden with Planning and Development. This is going to be the first of two annexations you have before you all tonight. They're all in the same area. So this property is at 5116 Needum Road, and it's non-contiguous but inside the ETJ. It's sized about 1.27 acres. The developer is proposing 27 units of townhomes on this property. So there is I did mention that it is non-contiguous and inside the ETJ. However, it is in an area where there are It's completely surrounded by some properties that are going to be coming into the city in June 30th that have delayed annexation effective dates. I've got a slide that can go over that in a little more detail. But this is an area of known service consideration, being just outside of the standard NFPA fire response times. This property is looking to hook up to water and sewer. There's water and sewer proposed in Needham. When you look at the map here, you don't see that, but there's been a lot of development in this area and they're building out that infrastructure. You can see that area is zoned R10 conditional use, some of the rezones around it. And if you go to the next one, you can see the site location just off the Beltline and Buffalo Road, Forestville area, some views of the street view. From Google Street View. You can see the site there. And if you see that small green square, that's actually the parcel that's being heard today. And if you see that light blue area, those are areas that are going to become part of the city on June 30th, 2024. So that's just a few weeks, at which point it would become contiguous to the primary city limits of the city of Raleigh. If you have any questions on that, more than happy to answer them tonight.
Okay, any questions of staff? Okay, no one has signed up to speak in support or in opposition, so I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'm going to move to approve with a delayed effective date of June 30th, 2024, so consistent with the rest of the light blue. Move with the permission to hook up to water and sewer. That's the last part, right?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is petition annexation AX 3923.
Thanks. So yeah, this is a familiar area. So this is in the 5100 and 5200 block of Forestville Road. Same area you see to the north, Buffalo Road, Forestville Road. It's an assemblage, so it's a bit bigger at 37.1 acres. So that's zoned commercial mixed use 3, conditional use, and also residential mixed use 3, conditional use. That has been a subject of that was the last one that was the subject of a recent rezone. So this here is contiguous to Satellite now. Like I said on the last annexation, after June 24th, it will become contiguous to the primary city limits once those annexations fill in. The developer of the property is looking to construct mixed use, 222 units of housing on that site, but also 29,000 square feet of commercial. There are some subdivision plans and site review plans under review at the present moment. There's water in Forestville and Buffalo Road. They're looking to hook up to water and sewer. As the last annexation you saw before, it is in an area of known service concern, being just outside of that standard response time for NFPA standard response time. Water and sewer are adjacent, and you can see that here on the map with utility location. And there it is in the larger context with the rezones and annexations that are coming into the city soon, or the rezones that had been approved and annexations coming into the city soon. You can see there the site location adjacent to some single-family homes already in the city, some more views of the site. And if you see there, the large green parcel is the annexation that you see that we're hearing tonight, and that light blue is the collection of parcels that are coming into the city on June 30th. So if you have any questions, also more than happy to answer them. So, yeah.
Just one question.
Any, go on.
Yeah, just one
Councilmember
question.
Branch.
This is one we, rezoned, about a year ago?
I think it was. I don't have the exact date. I know it was recently rezoned, but it was, I think, from my understanding, the smaller parcel that you just saw was more recently rezoned. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, because if I remember this correctly, and Councilor Patton, you can correct me, I think this one at the top part is like commercial, and then the rest of it, I think, is like rental homes, single homes.
So I think this was rezoned before my time.
Okay.
I think are you thinking of the one where we dedicated the fire station land?
No.
Oh, okay.
But it's fine. That's fine.
I did want to mention that if annexed today, it'll be brought into the boundaries of District B, which I forgot to mention. So,
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, no one has signed up in opposition. Michael Birch is here in support, so I'll open the hearing.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Get here just in case there are any questions. Happy to address. Absolutely. So this top portion here was previously zoned CX3. We took that through a text change to some of the conditions. That was November of 22. At the same time, we brought in this southern portion for the first time and rezoned that RX3. Again, that was November 15th of 2022.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing then. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve this annexation effective June 30th, 2024, with permission to hook up with water and sewer in the meantime.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. All right, next we have rezoning Z4623. This is the North Boylan assemblage. No one has signed up in opposition. Tom Johnson is here, signed up in support.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Matthew Burns with Planning and Development. This is a request to rezone about a half-acre site from office mixed use, 3 stories, detached frontage with the North Boylan Neighborhood Conservation Overlay to office mixed use, 12 stories, urban living-in frontage, conditional use, and remove that North Boylan overlay. The request is inconsistent with the future land use map and consistent with the comprehensive plan. And this last appeared on April 16th as a special item. And Planning Commission, excuse me, voted to send this request to City Council with no recommendation. So much of the surrounding site, well, it's a mix. So to the west is a lot of institutional and office uses, mostly built to 3-story maximums. And then to the northeast and east, building heights range between 3 and 40 stories. This site is adjacent to the Z26 site, which was recently approved to downtown mixed use 20 stories. Here are some views of the site. There are 3 existing businesses on the site, which include a salon, a fitness studio, and an engineering firm. Proposed conditions would prohibit a number of uses normally permitted in OX. They also limit buildings constructed on the property to no higher than 10 stories and provide for a contribution of $80,000 to the city's affordable housing program in lieu of dedicating affordable units. The request would increase entitlement across residential, office, and retail uses or combinations thereof. And I'll note that retail is not currently permitted under the existing zoning because it's required to be within an attached or a multi-tenant building. And the buildings on site are detached. As I mentioned earlier, the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, inconsistent with the future land use map, and consistent with the urban form map. If the rezoning is approved, the future land use map would be amended to community mixed use on the rezoning site. It's consistent with a number of policies in the comprehensive plan. Several of these are about higher density development, encourage more housing in downtown and retail. And it's inconsistent with 2 policies, the first being future land use map and zoning consistency, and the second being downtown transition areas. And as I mentioned, Planning Commission voted to send this to you with no recommendation. Please let me know if you have any questions before opening the public hearing.
Do we have any questions of staff? Okay. No one has signed up in opposition, as I said. Tom Johnson is here representing the applicant. I will open the hearing.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Tom Johnson with the law firm of Williams Mullen at 301 Fayetteville Street, Suite 1700 in Raleigh, here on behalf of the applicant. We made a couple of adjustments after Planning Commission. There was a concern raised about height. We limited the height to 10 stories. And then on affordability, we agreed to make a contribution to the affordable housing needs of the city. I'm glad to answer any questions you may have, but but, this certainly will add more density and more residential in this area.
Okay, any questions of Tom? All right, I'm going to close the hearing.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion? Okay.
I mean, no recommendation at all from planning commission? Oh,
Yeah, so there are 3 motions total. The first 2 motions failed. One was to approve, the other was to deny. They were split 4-4. So they settled on
no recommendation.
no recommendation, which was unanimous, 8-0.
Yeah, and I just want to speak to, I think, some of their discussion, at least from my reading of it. One of their concerns or questions is about the NCOD there, and the North Boylan NCOD, at least in my experience with it, and I don't know how it was in your tenure with District D, Councilmember Fort, but, it doesn't quite have some of the, I'd say, intact nature over all of the district. It doesn't really have any group that is kind of saying we want to continue this. I don't know what it was like in the past or the history of it, but in every case that we've dealt with in this area, I don't have a constituency that has a concern about the NCOD who's there. So that hasn't been a concern for me with the North Boylan NCOD, but I think to the Planning Commission's maybe conversation, it's worth revisiting the North Boylan NCOD and really talking about it and what was its intent and does it serve its purpose, or maybe we need to relook at that one. So that's perhaps for a committee meeting. I won't address that with this case. And then I do appreciate the contribution of affordable housing. The 80,000 represents what would be 2% of the total units at $40,000 a unit. It's not a large number of units that they can build with this. It's, I think, 79. So that's where that number comes from. And then they did bring the heights down to 10 stories, which is consistent with one of the cases we did, I don't know when, last year, that was right on that edge of Boylan Avenue. So it was, I'm trying to kind of think about that neighborhood transition piece, because that was one of the inconsistencies mentioned in the Planning Commission or the staff report. And so that's just a element that I'm really trying to consider from going from Forest Park to Glenwood South. And I think the 10 stories is kind of at that max for me right there. So with that, unless anyone has any other questions or comments, I am prepared to make a motion to approve. Okay. All right. I do move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated May 7th, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action. This approval is also deemed an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. All right, and then our final thing tonight, we have text change TC 723. This is the Mordecai Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District amendments.
Good evening. Keegan McDonald, I'm with Planning and Development. I'll provide an overview of this particular text change item. A little bit of background. So this is a city-initiated, or excuse me, a citizen-initiated request. The application was originally filed back in April of 2023, and it proposes some modifications to the existing Mordecai Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District. When the item first came to council for authorization, it did go briefly to committee and then back to the full council before it was authorized. As we went through the drafting process and eventually presented the item to Planning Commission, they conducted their review and voted to recommend denial 7-0 back in March 12th, 2024. The Mordecai NCOD was initially established in 1994. It's a little unique in that it has 2 sub-districts, which I'll explain the difference of each of those. There's 604 total parcels, with a slight majority being in District 2. Here are the existing NCOD regulations for Conservation District 1, and there's a geographic description there, and also a map if you want me to refer to it later. So there's a minimum and maximum lot size that's put in place, a minimum and maximum lot width, a front yard setback, and then a maximum building height. So again, NCODs really focus on form, not so much use. So there's specific regulations that can be modified or included within an NCOD. And of course, these are the ones listed for the Mordecai neighborhood. And then for District 2, the standards are nearly the same, except for the front yard setback. There is actually a range prescribed. So there's a minimum 15 feet versus a maximum of 25 feet. And just switching back to District 1, you can see that's just a minimum of 35 feet. So they have a difference in front yard setback, but otherwise all of the standards are the same. So the proposed regulations can really be broken out into two components. So there's a minimum 10-foot principal building separation that's being proposed. And unlike typical building separations, which really refer to the principal structure itself, the applicant has also included a few building elements to be included within that separation. So those are covered porches, covered stoops, bay windows, and vestibules. So that would mean those features would also have to maintain that 10-foot separation in addition to the kind of main part of the principal structure. And then staff has also, through working with the applicant, inserted language to require a minimum setback of 5 feet. And that's just to ensure that if someone was to build closer than 5 feet, that they're not imposing a larger setback than on their neighbor to maintain that 10-foot building separation. So the 5-foot minimum setback is really to ensure that separation, the 5-foot setback is intended to ensure that separation is really shared across property lines and between neighbors. And then the last component is introducing a maximum 5-yard front yard encroachment for the following building elements, which are covered porches and covered stoops. So typically those building features would be permitted up to a 9-foot encroachment into the front yard or towards the street. And so this would reduce that allowed encroachment to just 5 feet. And here's just an example of how the regulations might play out. So theoretical cottage court neighborhood with structures surrounding a common open space. And you can see principal building separation here of 6 feet. What the applicant has proposed would increase that to 10 feet between each of those structures. And then building feature encroachments into the front yard, you can see what may be permitted in terms of a 9-foot encroachment today would be limited to just a 5-foot encroachment under the proposal. So potential impacts: new minimum building spacing of 10 feet between principal buildings. The UDO currently allows some building types, such as multifamily buildings and dwellings and cottage courts, to only be spaced 6 feet apart. I will note the majority of the property within the district is residentially zoned. Right now, the cottage court housing pattern is the main option that allows for that more reduced building separation. But of course, as the code changes, that could also change. And then with that, there's a potential at present and maybe in the future for this building separation to potentially affect uptake of certain housing types, but that's highly context dependent, depending on the site that's chosen, the specific development pattern, the other constraints on the site that might affect the total yield of residential units. And then last, there's potential limitation on opportunities for street-facing building elements, the ones mentioned that have a further reduced encroachment allowance. So those would potentially be impacted. And that is all I have, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions. And I know the applicant is here and I believe has a presentation to provide as well.
Okay. What questions do we have for staff?
You go ahead, you go first.
I have a couple. One, the staff report mentioned something about modifications while this was at Planning Commission, that there was an 11th hour suggestion from the applicant to modify it.
Yeah, so the process once the text change is authorized and then goes through Planning Commission review is a little vague in terms of what's expected or what's prescribed, I should say, in the UDO. So we typically try to work with the applicant to make potential amendments or adjustments to the application through the drafting process, and then even sometimes at the planning commission stage. So that particular change that was requested came before the second text change committee meeting in February, and it affected the front yard building feature encroachment component. So right now, the proposal is to limit it to 5-foot encroachment. The applicant came back and said, after I think some additional feedback from the community and thought, that reducing that further to a 0-foot encroachment was actually desired. And so we made the text change committee aware of that particular request. We didn't really have time to update and amend the draft ordinance, but we made the text change committee aware, as well as the planning commission, but they chose to just review the version that they had in front of them and ultimately recommended denial. So they didn't really discuss that particular amendment.
Okay. And then, so from a procedural standpoint for our work at the table, are we only able to action, is like rezoning, you can only action like what's here, or do we have liberties to change it, or how does that work?
I'm going to defer to the attorney.
Okay.
Excuse me. Good evening, David York with the City Attorney's Office. It was discussed both ways with the Planning Commission. I mean, they were very opposed to a less restrictive than what the alternate would have been. It was advertised without that option. If you are wanting to approve it with the further restriction, the safest bet is to re-advertise. I don't know that it's necessarily required, but I would, after some further consultation with others, I think the more prudent thing would be to re-advertise for the more restrictive, because of how it was advertised.
Okay, sure.
But both were discussed at the Planning Commission. They rejected the more restrictive and then ultimately rejected the overall text change.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I have one more for Keegan, if that's okay.
Of me or?
For Keegan.
Sorry.
Okay, so just making sure I understood, and also want to understand how neighbors are impacted. So I drove through Mordecai this weekend in preparation, and there's a real mix of what's present on the homes already. Like the front doors are all in alignment, but some of them already have front stoops or front porches, and some of them don't. They just have a front, they just have a front door. So if you're the neighbor who just has a front door and you want to add a front porch, and if this were approved, you don't have any like encroachment space, what would you have? You would have to go to the Board of Adjustment?
Yeah, your options would be really at that point to go potentially receive a variance. You'd have to make a hardship case, and obviously that's a quasi-judicial decision. There's procedural limitations there in terms of, or I shouldn't say limitations, but there's specific procedure associated with that.
Okay, got it. And if your home was already non-conforming to the setback, because there were some homes that were like non-conforming to the setback, I think.
You have more.
There's some homes that are like really close to the front setback. Then what?
Yeah, so you're saying if a home is already past the setback limitation?
Yeah, like it's because it's like 25 feet in Mordecai too, but if your home is already built only 10 feet setback.
Yeah, in that instance, you'd still be limited most likely to requesting a variance if you wanted to construct, an addition, or as it relates to these regulations, put on a building feature.
Okay, got it, thank you.
I have a question around engagement. A lot of the pushback that I know I'm seeing and received is that a lot of people felt they weren't engaged and were not aware. Once the process started with the city, what engagement tools did the city do to inform the community of this text change?
So the only engagement that we conducted was the same as we do with all other text changes, except for the notice, which I'll get to in a moment, the mailed notice that's required by the UDO, because this is an NCOD. But of course, once you all authorize the text change, we worked to draft the ordinance. We published it to the engagement portal, so there's a report included in your backup. And then outside of that, the forum for public engagement was really the text change committee, planning commission, and then now city council meetings. And then on that point I mentioned, the UDO, because this is a neighborhood conservation overlay district and has a specific geographic boundary, requires mailed notice to make residents aware of this particular public hearing. So we sent out notice to all of the property owners and tenants within the neighborhood conservation overlay districts 1 and 2 prior to this meeting. That's the level of city-led engagement. I know the applicant has also done some engagement on their own and has some more information about that, I believe, in their presentation materials.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Okay, no one has signed up in opposition. We have one person signed up to speak in support. I'm going to open the hearing. Sean Ferris.
Council, thank you for your service. Thank you for listening today. Thanks to the people showing up and taking the time to support this cause. Mordecai would like to offer critical feedback to our zoning. We've witnessed dramatic shifts in a short period of time. This is concerning for an old neighborhood of small lots. I felt the need to ring the alarm as the character was not being preserved. I initiated the tools within the UDO to help. After this one-year journey, the outcome are 2 simple rules. 1, keep primary structures 10 feet apart. Covered porches and vegetables shall be considered part of the primary facade. Now, these guidelines are no different than Forest Park, who have similar rules. We hope that these changes act as an info guide for our NCOD. NCODs should not be static, and NCOD is unique. Homeowners buy into it. We are collective caretakers with the power to update. Let's look at the guidelines and see how they help with Mordecai's design. So over time, we've seen the fronts of homes sort of move forward, and we're seeing the distance between homes get smaller. So we're going from this, and the proposed is this, 6 feet, which is really less than this. From kind of grand entrances to direct off the sidewalk. As you can see here, it's pretty tight. Less impervious surface, and Mordecai is in a 90% rainwater reward zone. So hoping to kind of reclaim that earth back for us. So we're prioritizing a few feet for all to accommodate context-sensitive density and preserve built characteristic. Again, these are the rules. And there was controversy from neighborhood feedback about that 5 feet. The issue was people would design towards it versus just we decided let's eliminate it. But that's when staff kind of didn't allow us to update our last thing, and that's where the denial came in. But as you can see here, the inventory is very random. It's like 30 is the average, but from 5 to 148 is the distance between. But if we look closer, you can see what's kind of aligning with the setback and what is the 10-foot separation. So we kind of marked everything here. Kind of did the whole neighborhood. But the summation is 93% of the neighborhood character aligns with the 10 feet principal building separation. We actually have a multifamily with this 10-foot standard. The facade is a little bit more complex. There's 2 NCODs, but we noticed that 35 encroach in NCOD 1 and 43 encroach on NCOD 2. So we felt a need to just pull back because porches were never part of the NCOD in the beginning. So that got loosened up, and it's kind of creating more, what would you call it, difference in the space or character. Let's see here. We had some great public input here. People are just sort of maximizing their lots, and so we need to kind of pull this back in. I agree with that's how it's regulating. One mentioned, how does one get to the roof in that 6-foot canyon? We presented at 3 CAC meetings, more than was required of rezoning. This application changed twice to incorporate neighborhood feedback. We believe that this tech change will ensure predictability, conserve green space already established by the city, and maintain neighborhood character. This is sort of the timeline that what happened. Spoke to you all, got feedback, went through the growth committee. We had the public input survey. We tried to revise it one last time in March, and here we are today. And I believe you can accept all terms or strike what does not inspire you. We're pleading with you to preserve a little bit of Raleigh. We don't want to wait any longer, so please vote yes for TC 723. Again, there's really no one here giving opposition, so any questions?
Councilmember Branch?
Question, you mentioned on one of your slides that this change would help predict, go back 2 slides, I'll make sure I say it right.
Ensure predictability.
You said it would, ensure predictability. How does what you have currently in this differ? Because what you have currently, you're trying to make it bigger.
Our predictability is with all the missing middle changes that have happened, flag locks can occur, so other things can happen to a lot or combination of lots. So, roads can be added, courtyards are added. These types of things aren't typical of a single-family home, and those types of, I would say, redevelopment cases.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question for staff. It's for Pat or Bynum or whomever. Right now, we're in the middle of updating the UDO, I guess starting that process with, the comprehensive plan, with the changes and the things that they're requesting. Would that address, would those items be reviewed as part of that comprehensive review as well?
Excuse me, sir. Good evening, Pat Young with Planning and Development. Certainly, Councilmember, a big part of the comprehensive plan is looking at existing form, particularly in NCODs, and whether there are needs for tweaks, changes, or refinement to allow incremental growth and change in the neighborhoods, and to make sure that we understand, as is happening here with Mordecai tonight, the community's temperature and interest in the character. So yes, that'll be a big part of the comprehensive plan process.
Okay. That's very helpful for me as we're trying to figure this out in a path forward. So because of that, what's the time frame of that work?
So we'll be starting this year with some community conversations and outreach on specialized topics. That probably will not this year include neighborhood character. It may. We're going to try to get that in. And the intention is to complete the work by the end of 2026.
Okay. So Sean, what pressures are you all feeling right now?
I mean, council can change between now and 2 years, so we're hoping to ensure we've done the work here, and it's, obviously I can't make everybody happy, but, we're looking for some sort of assurance to protect and preserve the character. So, from what we're seeing, the combination of lots, we sort of need that separation and guarantee. So again, Forestville did this work previously. They're good to go. They're insured, if you quote, but we have no insurance as today. So anyway, we'd like to get this completed.
Okay.
But another 2 more years is not something I want to do.
Well, it sounds like the process is starting in the fall. And
I'd be happy to be a part of that, but
Yeah.
I think we should.
And one of my concerns and fears is that changes made are changes that are undone because of holistic planning. And like you said, councils change. So anything can happen. So those are my concerns. And I think, one of the changes that I hear that wanted to be made was to be a little even more restrictive as far as it. And so, I'm kind of leaning towards supporting the recommendation from the Planning Commission on this, not just because of that, but just we've received as a council a lot of emails and feedback about, hey, no, wait, we weren't informed, we weren't engaged. I know we've talked and we've met. It's been a while recently, but I know in the beginning we had a lot of conversations and stuff, and that was one of the things I pushed, is that making sure we really have that outreach.
Well, we can always strike the
Right.
second motion. So the first one can remain, the 10 feet between homes, which I think is, 90% of the character of the neighborhood. 93% aligns with that. So I don't think you're in any kind of danger there. However, the encroachment was brought up by our zoning chair of the CAC. And again, some people don't go to the CACs, which is unfortunate. That's where my main forum, public forum, was. And, got some criticism that I needed to spread the word more. So I made some posters, and we were already in flow, already in motion. So, but I think the 10 feet should hold. But I mean, we have here people supporting, this encroachment is what we're trying to stop. And we thought the 5 foot was still a little bit of a leeway for people to, if they needed that extra 5 feet, they could have it. So that's where that comes from.
I'm open to hear other counselors.
Well, based on the feedback that we got via email, I'd be very reluctant to support this at this time. There was a lot of opposition, and people felt that they were not informed by the neighbors.
And they're happy to be here today to speak on this.
Yeah, I just want to.
Councilmember Patton.
Yeah, sorry. Hey, Sean, I want to thank you for your work, and I think the beauty of local government is there's a mechanism for you to pursue this, and I'm glad you went through the process, and I think that's very cool. When this was first before us and we authorized it to proceed through the process, it seemed relatively modest that this was sort of responsive to a cottage court going in, but they're not likely to be new cottage courts going in, and it seemed relatively modest. But the front yard, front porch, stoop encroachment piece is giving me a lot of heartburn. I drove through Mordecai this weekend. It's a beautiful neighborhood. I'd love to be able to afford to live in Mordecai. But there are a lot of non-conforming homes. There's a lot of different setbacks there, and there's a lot of neighbors who don't have one. And I was just thinking about the Smiths or the Patels who might live in those homes, and I think your intention was to kind of put some onus on new development, but I was thinking about all those neighbors you already have who are now going to have this extra burden of going to the Board of Adjustment and proving hardship so they can just build onto their existing properties.
That's definitely tough.
Yeah.
But we think most people will put an extension on the back versus the front. So that's our hope there. But again, you asked for me to get more community feedback. I did. And now this extra rule is kind of causing some heartburn for you all. So I would say either go for all or go for one. But I would say preservation is a hard, dirty word around here. I wish it wasn't so. But thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I would say,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, to bring it back to the table, I think I could begin to support the 10-foot separation piece with the little caveat that staff added about the sharing it across parcel lines or whatever, but I couldn't support the front yards and front porches piece, but I'm open to discussion.
Well, do we have any other questions? I'm going to close the hearing then.
So, first of all, thank you again for your work. Thank you all for coming out. This one isn't easy from just understanding the impact I know of new development, but also looking at existing residents and opportunities, because you have quite a few residents that are looking to do modifications and upgrades to their home. And because I'm aware of the work that staff is looking to do, one of the things that I would ask is that staff would take this and as it works on the comprehensive plan, look at it, consider it, and try to work with the community and even other resident communities so that we can look at this. But at this time, I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated May 7th, 2024, containing the agenda materials, and to deny the zoning text amendment.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Staff, you heard feedback, so thank you for, as we move forward. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.